Hey, if you're listening to this, thanks for stopping by. My name is Jarrett, and I run the More Than Blockchain podcast. Now, before the podcast rebranded its name to More Than Blockchain, it was entitled Wi-Fi and Water. And so this episode was originally recorded under the podcast's original name. Episodes 1 through 13 were recorded under the name Wi-Fi and Water. And so if you're hearing this, that's why. Please enjoy the episode, and thanks for checking out the More Than Blockchain podcast. If you go on CoinMarketCap.com, you will see that there are over 12,000 cryptocurrencies currently being bought and sold. What does this mean? This means that cryptocurrency is much bigger than Bitcoin or that Dogecoin thing that your friend's friend now is a millionaire off of. It also means that if you're in the cryptocurrency space, we're all just forever students, which is why I was so happy to have Stephanie Jones on to talk about her experience in value investing in cryptocurrency. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is Wi-Fi and Water. Stephanie, welcome to Wi-Fi and Water. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jarrett. How are you doing? Thanks for having me today.
I'm doing well. And as you know, and now our listeners know, this is the first podcast I will have recorded with a guest early in the morning, because normally I meet with guests around 8 to 9 at night. And that's just because kids are to bed, the day is over, whatever, but we were able to find a time in the morning. So thank you for getting up and, willing to talk about our topic today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm an early bird, so this is perfect for me. I've already been up like 3 hours already, so we're good.
Okay, good. In some things I'm an early bird, in some things I'm an early bird, and some things I'm not. And I really like currently how this is going. This is like our sunrise podcast where we're going to talk about crypto.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going to be something I'm going to do in the future. One of the things, I travel a good amount, or at least pre-pandemic I did. And I remember hearing this stat that was like, after 4 p.m., flights are 80% or like 60 to 80% more likely to be delayed. And that always made so much sense to me, because basically you have all of these slight delays, 10-minute delays throughout the day where a plane or the crew is being backed up exactly in that compound. So after 4 o'clock, things are more 60, 80% more likely to have a delay, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And so maybe that's the same theory I should start taking with the podcast. I should start to record earlier.
Yeah. It's like going to the doctor's office. Always get the first appointment in the morning, because then you don't
exactly.
get delayed.
Or it's like getting your hair cut. You want to be the first like 2 or 3 in the chair, because by 4 p.m., if they open at 7, you're not going to get the same cut.
That's right. Same thing goes for talking about crypto,
Exactly.
coffee and crypto.
That's that sounds like a new podcast that should be like a part of this, coffee and crypto. And
yeah.
It's like, I get people up at 5 a.m. and I'm like, what do you think about Bitcoin?
That would be funny. Like get their like sort of sleepy ideas about cryptocurrency and their investing strategy. It'll go really good.
Exactly. Because isn't it like when the first couple minutes when you're awake, you have like a similar sensation as if you were kind of tipsy, like your brain isn't totally, the motors aren't exactly running. So you could get people's super candid opinions on crypto.
Almost like a drunk history, but like sleepy crypto advice.
Exactly. Almost like drunk history. And with that, we work together at the same company.
We do.
And can you remind me how it is that we started to talk about crypto? Because it's not something that like just kind of comes up. But did I mention something? Did you say something? How did that happen?
I can't remember. It was very organic. So I think we were working on some social media efforts for the company that we work for. And for some reason, we just got chit-chatting about crypto, and because you're kind of a crypto evangelist. That's how I look at you as. And I was like, oh, wow, he invests in crypto, and we do too. And that's really neat. And we just started talking about the nuances and just a lot of specifics about, the adoption rates and who's adopting it and who's not. And that's how we kind of got talking, I think.
So it's interesting the way you just said that. It's not I invest in crypto, it's we invest. So when you say we, are you talking about you and your husband, your
Yes.
family, your extended family? What does the we entail, and how long have we, or how long have you plural, been
Yeah.
investing in crypto?
My husband and I have been married for over 20 years. Like we've been together forever. We were high school sweethearts, and we have always invested very early in our marriage. I will be honest with you, though, we were late crypto adopters. We did have some friends that were investing 10 years ago, and they probably no longer have to work. Specifically, they invested in Bitcoin. But we were kind of late adopters. We only just started investing the last few years, and we were like, wow, this is not some kooky thing, fly by night craziness that appallingly some people are still touting that it as, even in the face of all the data and the information that's out there. But yeah, we just kind of started seeing the value in it. We kind of come from more of an value investing background. That's how we started getting into investments. And yeah, we kind of started seeing that value in the crypto arena and started putting some money into it. And we're really happy that we did. So yeah, that's kind of how we got started in everything.
Do you remember when that was? Because for me personally, it was in the summer of 2017, right before the 2017, as the bull run was ramping up, as any bull run does. All of a sudden, more light is shined on Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and that's just, I remember very vividly. And I talk about that in one of the episodes where I actually still have that printout picture from when I went and put cash into a Bitcoin ATM and then it gave me back
Wow.
Bitcoin. Do you
Yeah.
remember when it was, the year or the moment or the reason why maybe you both stopped and
Yeah.
said, let's look at this?
Yeah. So again, we are very almost recent, I would say recent adopters. Like I think late 2019, early 2020 was when we actually bought our first crypto. However, we are like a slow moving turtle when it comes to investment. I am personally very risk averse. And so I probably spent a year and a half, 2 years just reading about it, trying to understand it, trying to kind of deep dive more into why would anyone invest with this? What are they doing with it? And then you kind of realize it's not just this. To me personally, I look at crypto as not just like, oh, it's like a junky stock that people are investing in. It's actually a new way of looking at the world, and it's a platform for new technologies to flourish and thrive. And when you start looking at it in that manner, you quickly realize that, wow, this is a legitimate investment vehicle, and they're doing some really cool things, and let's jump on board and do this. So we had my husband's active duty military, so we shipped around a lot, and our last year at our previous assignment was spent just like grinded it out with work. We were trying to save for a house. We were getting ready to move. We live in North Carolina. We were getting ready to move to North Carolina for our final move because he's getting ready to retire. And we were just solely focused on socking away as much money as possible. And I started reading about this. I had some friends that were really interested in the crypto arena, and they're like, "Hey, Steph, you really need to put some thought into this." And my husband also had some friends that were also investing in it for quite some time. And so we would have conversations with them and what they were investing in. And that's kind of, it kind of organically grew into this reality, I think, in our investing portfolio. I don't want to say there was like one day we were like, we're dumping, tens of thousands of dollars in it. We kind of like put our feet in very, very gently. And now we're working to make it more of an automatic investment, just like we would our 401ks or IRAs. So that's kind of where we are.
I think that's awesome because having conversations about it just makes it seem a lot more, even though it's an intangible asset, it makes it seem a lot more tangible and a lot more digestible. And every time I have a conversation about crypto, including this one, I'm learning more. And so I love to hear that you had friends who had been investing in it for a long time, seemingly. I mean, anything past 5 years is a long time. If you were investing before the 2017 bull run, you've been in crypto a long time.
Yeah.
And so having conversations, I think, just always seems to add more, like I say, tangible context. Because if you know someone that you trust outside of crypto and they say, hey, I really think you should look at this. It's almost kind of like real friends don't let friends not know about crypto. And I know that sounds like super cliche. And I'm sure I'm that guy at the party that will like dive into Bitcoin. But I'm just kind of like, when I look around at my generation and really anybody in the United States who has student debt, who is paying their mortgage, who is basically has a lot of financial responsibilities monthly, it's like you need to put your money in something that is going to continue to outpace inflation, outpace just
Yes,
everything else. And so for me, it's like those conversations are invaluable. And I'm sure you look back and you're like thankful that those people shared whatever they shared, even if they just pointed you and say, hey, you know what, Steph, you may want to check this out.
absolutely. I also come to investing from I kind of nerd out on like books about the history of economics. And my husband minored in economics in college, and it's fascinating to me. It's like a huge game of Tetris, and how all of these different cultures and societies put together their own ideas of what money is and the value of money, and how money is accepted and transferred. And so I had just finished reading this great book. I cannot remember the name of the person who wrote it. It's basically a history of economics from pre Alexander the Great until post World War II. And it's called The Silk Roads. And it looks at everything from history from a perspective of the Silk Road that started in China and how that has influenced geopolitical relations, how that has influenced the transfer of money throughout civilizations and time. And so it's interesting to me to be on the cusp, not really the cusp, but I shouldn't say the cusp, because like you said, pre 2017 was probably the cusp, but like we are still on the tip of what this is going to be in the future, and to kind of be living it is a pretty cool thing. Just seeing yourself in that historical context throughout time.
It is a really cool thing. And sometimes I have to pinch myself because I am too young to have had skin in the game, I guess you could say, for the .com bubble. But I remember what that did to the economy. I remember that happened right around the time of 9/11. So you had about 6 to 8 months where not only was there an economic crash, there was also like a geopolitical boom and crash.
Yeah.
And that's when Enron went down and a bunch of things just kind of like blew up. And I think it took the rug out of the feet of many people, out from under the feet of
Yes.
many people, because it's like, our country is so geopolitically unstable. If we can have people fly airplanes into, New York City and
Right.
DC and Pennsylvania, but it was also just kind of like there are consequences to not understanding basic economics, and there are consequences to not being responsible, I think. And
Yeah.
I'm going to try to hunt down that book because I think it sounds fascinating, and it really sounds similar to a book that I'm finishing reading now, which has taken me a long time only because I'm reading it slowly.
Yeah.
And I will send it to you when I'm done. Maybe we
Okay.
can do a book exchange.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
send you the Silk Roads. I just can't remember. I've got it back here in the bookcase, but I can't remember the name of the person who actually wrote it, but I'll send the link to you after this podcast. So I
okay.
love book recommendations.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to shout these out too in the outro. This one
Okay.
is called, the one I'm reading is called The Bitcoin Standard. And I'm going to mess up the author's name. I think it's Saifedean Almus. And once again, I'll send you all the information. But the way that he sets up essentially his argument, and he's not necessarily an evangelist or a Bitcoin maximalist. I mean, he thinks it's something that society and humanity needs, but he does exactly what you're saying the Silk Road does. It's fascinating. He goes back and he says, let's look at all these ancient civilizations and what they called money. Because this idea of paper money, now we have Washingtons and Benjamins. This is a new concept. For a long time in human history, people would use
Yes.
all kinds of different things. They used huge stones. They used certain beads. For a long time it was gold,
Shells.
shells. It was all kinds of, it
Yeah.
was things essentially. And this is
Yeah.
this is like the main point. So I'm gonna kind of ruin it for people, but it was this idea of hard money. And hard money essentially was, is it hard or is it difficult to create? If it is, then it's a good place to store your value. So if you had these unique shells that could only be found in a certain beach on a certain island, those were unique and it was hard to create them. If you had these
Yeah.
huge stones, I think they were called the Ra stones, you just can't create them overnight. They came from a certain quarry far away and you just can't lug them around. They weigh tons. And then there was this story of African beads, and there were these certain beads made from a different shell or whatever. And then he fast forwards to today and he's like, government money, is it hard to create more? And the answer is
Yeah.
no. They can just create it whenever they basically all decide they want to create it. And they pass legislation, they pass the bill. And then he brings you right, slams you obviously into Bitcoin. And he's like, well, there can only ever be 21 million.
Yeah.
And I think on this podcast up to this point, we've really only ever spoken about Bitcoin, but that's because Bitcoin is kind of like the gateway drug. You kind of
True.
need to wrap your head around that. And then maybe you start to get into some other drugs, other
Yeah,
psychedelics.
more specifics and yeah, more. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but I do think it is interesting, and I think this is a generational. It highlights a generational gap too. I think within the digital sphere. So I think I'm like 20 years older than you. So I am a Gen. What am I? Gen Zer. I think no, I'm not Gen Zer. I'm
Gen
Gen
X.
Y. Gen X. There you go. Sorry, I don't even know who I am, but I'm like in my 40s. And my mom is, and my our parents are boomers, and then I have nieces and nephews who are millennials. And I'm not sure where you fall in there, or if you care to say, but uh, I feel like that my generation, being in my mid 40s, we grew up when computers started to become the norm in school. We grew up at the burgeoning of the internet. And so we're a little bit easier to adopt these kind of abstract concepts than, say, like our parents and grandparents are. However, now there's this whole thing of this very abstract idea of cryptocurrency and blockchain and NFTs. And I do see a lot of people in my generation even struggling to wrap their minds around that. We do have a lot of friends that do invest in it. They may not understand it completely, but they're like, hey, there's value here. So we're going to chunk some money into it. But I think I see my children who are teenagers and middle schoolers right now, and it's nothing for them. They think about things very differently. They adopt things at a very faster rate than we do. Whereas, like I said, and I don't speak for all Gen Xers, but I'm very slow. I won't say I'm very slow to adopt things. I'm just very cautious about things. So obviously, I'm making a huge generalization. I'm not speaking for our generation, but I do feel like that each generation adopts things and has almost a different reality than the previous generation before that. And so I find it interesting, that kind of correlation and parallel with cryptocurrency and the new technologies that are coming out. So it's just a fascinating way to think about generations and technology and our interaction with that technology.
I was listening to Raoul Paul talk yesterday, and I'm a millennial, and I'll totally age myself here because most people on the podcast kind of know how old I am, but I'm 34.
Okay.
But I was raised by boomers. My dad was born, and I'm going to age him too. And sorry, Dad, but he is the definition of a boomer. He was born in 45. That is
Oh, wow.
the beginning of the boomers. We're coming back from the war. The economy is great. We're giving Europe the Marshall Plan. The United States has never been better. We have 50% production of all goods. Our exports are 50% now. They're like, I don't know, less than 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
So the economy's booming. Life is great. People are coming back. Let's have kids. Let's get homes, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I was listening to Raoul Pal talk. God, I always mess up his name. I was listening to Raoul Pal talk. And for those people who are listening to the pod, like, oh, who is this guy? Well, go search him. Raoul, last name Pal, Pal. He was a hedge fund manager for a long time, and he is probably one of my favorite people to listen to about crypto, because he, like you, is also a value investor and he's a macro investor. So he doesn't necessarily get down in the weeds about how does this exactly work. He just says, where is humanity going? And I'm going to put my money ahead of it. And one of the things he was saying that I was listening to, it totally dovetails with what you were just saying about the generational gap of adoption. He was basically saying that for people like you and myself, we were raised by boomers, and boomers are inherently risk averse because they could be and still make money. Because when they were growing up, they could put their money in the bank and make 15% annually per year.
Yes.
And their homes have always appreciated a crazy amount. And when they bought their homes, their first home or whatever, they bought it. If you looked at the household income, it was almost maybe half of what the home price was. And now if a home's $1 million, you're saying that, the household income needs to be 500,000. So when they were investing their whole lives, they were able to be more risk averse. And then they raised kids who were risk averse. And then they raised kids who were just at the beginning of the computer stuff. like you and I. We were
Yeah.
just at the beginning. I actually found a picture of myself when I was like 2 or 3, couldn't have been more, sitting at a computer the other day. And so they raise a whole generation giving their traits on, and they don't do it out of malice. It's just what they know. And so they're
Yeah,
risk averse because they could be, because at that time you could put money in the bank and get 15% back, which now
exactly.
you get less than 1/4%.
Oh, I know.
And you had that. And then you
Sad.
also didn't have technology. So now when you're like, you have to use technology and it's an extremely volatile asset class, there's going to be crazy pushback. Cause I was trying to think the other day, I'm like, why is there so much pushback from people that I know trust me, like on a very inherent and like, my life level. But when
Yeah.
I say, hey, I think you should put $50 into this, there's pushback. Like I'm asking them to do something that would, question their moral compass. But I realize it's just that they were raised by boomers who are risk averse.
Yeah.
And we live in a risk averse society where it's easier to be fearful than to kind of, it's easier to wait and not jump off the cliff than to go cliff diving or whatever reason. There's more reasons not to, I guess, than there may be too. And I think
True.
that is starting to play away in the way I'm trying to now communicate crypto to people, because I totally get it. Like,
Yeah.
if you are risk averse, it doesn't really matter. You have to kind of break down those barriers of risk aversion and speak to that. So what's something about crypto, if you want to speak about Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, what's something that allows you to turn down your risk aversion buzzer, if you will?
So one of the things, and not to make this all about value investing, but one of the things I love about value investing, there's not a, there's always a level of chance, but it's really more of a focus on these are the parameters. If an asset fits in these parameters, it's a good, you can invest in it and you can make money. So when you look at it from more of a practical, logical standpoint like that, and you realize that there are mispricing in the market, as we know. I mean, when you look at the what it is going to be in 10 to 15 years, and what these technologies and some of these currencies are doing, and how many people are in it now, and how many people are going to be in it 10 to 15 years from now, that is, to me, that is value added. To me, it is mispriced, even though some people say, oh my goodness, there's no way it's going to maintain this level of pricing. But then you look at it and you're like, there's millions of people that aren't even in here yet that are going to be in 10 to 15 years now. That's how I see it. That's how my friends who are also really into crypto see it as well. So to me, you have that. I think that they're looking at value investing like to take advantage of overreactions in the market. We see that a lot right now with the volatility in it. And I think there are, there's going to be some trash crypto, just like there's trash stocks and trash bonds and things like that. But when you look at some of these cryptocurrencies, and a lot of them actually, and what they are doing technology wise, and what they are bringing to the DeFi space, and it's just amazing to me. And I really liked your podcast. I believe it was maybe 2 weeks ago when you were talking about regulation and your Ted Cruz highlight, which I really found funny. I think when you start having people wanting to regulate it, then that gives it salt. It gives it some. What am I trying to look for here? So it substantiates the asset. So I think when you look at, you have people, young people who are trying to buy homes and raise children, because that's the part of life where I'm at right now. And you're looking at how much college costs, and you're looking at, you want them to be set up for life, to, be able to, go and produce and be productive members of society. You're looking at your paycheck and you're like, okay, in 10 to 15 years, I can't just, like you said earlier, you can't just stick that in savings. You're going to be actually losing, several percentage points on your money year after year after year. And I don't think that is something obviously that the boomers that generation didn't really deal with per se. You've got people coming out of college with incredible debt, and their normal, paycheck, that old adage of work hard, save your money, and I would even say to a certain extent too. I mean, obviously, yes, put money in your 401k, take advantage of those tax savings, but even that, like, sometimes is not enough to be where you want to be in 10 to 15, 20 years from now. That's my personal opinion, not any sort of financial advice whatsoever. But so I really think, as crypto evolves and we start seeing the SEC say, okay, you need to provide balance sheets and financial reports. I think that it'll just, and I do totally see that coming. I think that it's just going to bolster that platform even more and more, and you'll see more people hop into it. You'll see, money managers start to investing, if they haven't already, in that arena and putting gobs and gobs of people's pension money and things of that nature into that platform. But I think right now, my personal opinion is there's a huge margin of safety in the crypto field. And one of the things I like to do is I like to read the white papers of anything that we invest in. So you kind of see what they're doing, how they're engaging in the community, who's behind these currencies, so to speak, who's developing it, what are they engaged in, what are they about, what are they trying to do with it? Because that's a big thing for me. I don't like to invest in companies that don't align with my values as a person. If you're just I'm not going to invest in a stock in a company that's spewing, radioactive material into a river. I'm not going to do that. So I want to make sure that whoever I invest in on the crypto field kind of follows those same lines, whatever they might be for each individual person. So I think there's ways that you can be a value investor and get into the crypto field, but it's just like any other asset class. You got to do your research. You got to see what they're about. You can't just be like, oh, I think they're doing some pretty cool stuff. Let me throw some money into there. So that's kind of how we go about it. And then also too, what is their adoption rate? Are they working with other platforms? Are they what kind of technology are they actually developing and running, along with their cryptocurrency? So some of them are doing just some amazing, very interesting things that I could just go on and on about, and I won't bore everybody here with it, but I just think it's just the coolest, neatest thing. It's just fun to sit down and read about it and see what they're doing. And it's just a lot of fun to me personally.
I totally agree. And I can't tell if this is what you're saying. This is what I heard from what you were saying, but you're kind of excited for regulation, because I know I am. I'm pumped for regulation.
Yeah.
Because regulation just says, this is okay. We're now going to create the rules in which you can play this game. But we are getting into something before it's regulated. So once it's regulated, it's going to be off to the races. And I'll send you these links. I put up on my website these 2 investor guides that came out from Standard Chartered, which is one of the biggest banks out of London. And they have an investment guide PDF for Bitcoin and an investment guide PDF for Ethereum, which basically, if they're already investing in creating, investor focused materials, they know what's happening. The banks know what's happening. And if there's one thing I learned from 2008, it's that the banks run this country. They were able to say, hey, we messed up. We double dipped. We put our hand in the cookie jar, but you're going to now make us solvent. And then we're going to have money to still pay out our CEOs hundreds of millions of dollars of bonuses, while everyone else holds the bag and loses their job, loses their home. So when I see the banks moving at this, and I know that Fidelity Investments in Boston is big, I hear Bank of America is super bullish. In the next 6 months, basically in the first 2 quarters of 2022, I think most of these banks are going to offer their high net worth clients, and then eventually everyone, you're going to be able to get this through the app, because these more old school traditional banks know that they have to keep up with Cash App, Square, PayPal, and Venmo, because all of those things now have their own credit cards and basically offer their own checking and savings accounts. And I remember it was a year ago, I read that the brick and mortar bank is essentially dying because it takes them 90% more dollars to get a new customer. So for every customer, the old brick and mortar, like a Bank of America would get, takes I think it was $2,000, but Square can get a new customer for about $200. Just the way that they're fitting into our digital framework and digital economy. So the old school banks are going to probably be the last ones at the table, but when they come, they're going to bring the most food to the table, in overall liquidity into the market. And so,
and I think you're going to see that adoption rate just skyrocket. Then everybody's going to be like, whoa, hold a minute. I need to get smart on this. And
it's going to get parabolic. It's going to be quite the thing. And you were saying that you read the white papers, which I think is great. I've read some of the Ethereum white paper. And in the world we live in 2008 also, I think, scared people away from investing. It scared people because a lot of people got wiped out in the stock market. Obviously, if you held on for a couple of years, things tended to go back. But one of the things I think I see now is that we're just lazy. People just they don't want to learn. They don't want to, do your own research, as you're saying. But I wanted to ask you, of the white papers you read, and maybe if you could talk about a cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin, what's one that you're either investing in or excited to invest in, or one that you just think is like super cool because of what it's trying to do?
Okay. I could talk about this for hours. And I even took some notes last night about some of our crypto that we were investing in. Because, you read about, I'm really bad though. I read about things. I read the white paper. I'm like, oh, this sounds really great. I kind of do an extensive Google search, make sure there's no craziness going on. Somebody's not smoking crack or something on the engineering team. I don't know, what, just want to make sure that there's nothing that would make me, because I look at investing okay, I don't want to invest in you. And then let me read some things and let's see if you can change my mind, rather than, and that helps me fight my confirmation bias. So, because sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to invest in this. And then you start reading everything that's great about it and you're negating everything that could go wrong. So one of the ones that we are super excited about investing in is Algorand. I don't know if you have.
I was looking at it last night. I honestly can't even believe you just said this, because I was looking at it on Binance. You get 8 to 10% back just because it's already proof of stake. You get 8 to 10% back annually just by holding it. And I almost bought some last night, but I think I'm going to really get into Algorand. I was just looking and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, they're just doing some really interesting things with their proof of stake, and then the way that interfaces with our algorithms. I am not an engineer, so I'm not going to get too in the weeds on this, because I really don't. What I struggle with personally, and this is just in full disclosure, is some of the nuances of the engineering of these blockchains and cryptocurrencies. It's above my capacity to understand sometimes. But just when you look at the way they're using that to provide the space for collective learning, I think is really, really fascinating. So we have a portion of our portfolio in that. And then the other one, gosh, I got so many here. I just wanted to talk about all of them. I don't have time. The other one I think is kind of cool is NuCypher. I think their encryption technology is pretty neat. And I can see with all of the cybersecurity issues that a lot of companies are facing, I can see that having a larger piece of the pie, so to speak, in the encryption and cybersecurity arena. Gosh, another one that's really cool. I need to do some more research on them, but they're just kind of interesting. And what they're doing is Fetch AI. Have you read about them at all? So they're connecting the Internet of Things, IoT, with algorithms. And they are using that to fund learning and development of new technologies. I'm not a big algorithm girl, but it just is really fascinating and I feel like that's going to tap into everything we see going on in telecom industry with, 5G being more adopted around the country. And I just think that is going to really have some interesting applications. It almost sounded like when you watch The Matrix and all the little spider nodes go out and they search for things and they bring them back. That's what Fetch AI reminded me of, using smart technology and machine learning to develop some really fascinating connections between industries. I just thought that was really cool.
This is why I love talking about crypto, because I always learn new things. Like I said, I just got into Algorand. I was watching a YouTube last night. I was reading on it. I was on CoinMarketCap looking at its overall history and trying to figure out its adoption, trying to basically see if it has the things I like. Tell me more about Fetch AI though, because where are you guys buying that?
So Coinbase has it.
Coinbase has it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you can buy it there. I believe I saw it on one of the other platforms too. We basically live in the Coinbase world. So I do my research there. I go to CoinMarketCap, just read a lot of articles on the internet and things like that. So we actually, how Coinbase does its little things where, you can earn 2 or 3 things of crypto if you go through this thing. And I love those because it makes me look at cryptocurrencies that I would never look at before. And so I did the little, oh, let's learn about this cool little cryptocurrency, Fetch AI. And then I was like, well, that's interesting. Let's find out more about that. And so I just started reading a bunch of articles on it. And I think it has a lot of implications too for academia as well, just with the machine learning aspect of it and the way it can make correlations and parallels across industries. That to me is just something that just defies what we've been able to do in the last forever. And so now to be able to tap into the machine learning and deep learning arena is, again, this is why I love what I love. And I kind of nerd out on crypto is because it is just doing so many different, interesting things that I just find fascinating. And, the learner in me just enjoys reading about what they're doing specifically.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good overall investment strategy to only buy currencies that are essentially available on Coinbase, because Coinbase, now that they're a publicly traded company, they go through some crazy due diligence and some crazy, background research before they put anything on their platform. So that's kind of a shout out to Coinbase, who, I think is doing things the right way. I know that they have current problems with, they're just not keeping up with their customer service. A lot of people have lost thousands of dollars on their platform, and then they reach out and they're like, hey, I was phished or this happened. And I know that they're not maybe keeping up with that as best as they should, but I think they're trying to do it the best way they can. And right. I'm going to definitely look more into this Fetch AI. And I think one of the things I don't think I can say enough is that the whole space is called cryptocurrency because of Bitcoin, because it uses cryptography. And the whole idea was that it was going to be money. So cryptography and money came out to be cryptocurrency. But really, something like Fetch AI, and I would say 95% of quote cryptocurrencies should really be seen as digital assets or just digital stocks and companies that haven't even started to churn their wheels. And once you think of it that way, like something like Fetch AI, once again, I'm going to look more into it, but definitely something like Algorand, they're not trying to be something that everybody probably has in their wallet and is using to buy soda at the corner store.
Right.
They're trying to be futuristic companies, and the way that they're building their stock issuance is just using blockchain. And so it's going to be outside of the normal S&P 500. It's outside of quote Wall Street. It's more of a global option where more people can get at it. So I don't know. Whenever I can say that out loud and have people hear it, I want them to realize that not everything is going to be a cryptography based currency of the future. A lot of these are literally just stock offerings for companies that will be the size of Amazon probably in the next 10 years, if not sooner. So when you think of it that way, it's like everyone should be learning, like you said, nerding out a little bit.
I think one of the barriers to cryptocurrency is that you have people that, like us, it sounds like, that just kind of nerd out on like the coolness of it, almost like science fiction, but it's not science fiction. I like science fiction, so I can nerd out on that stuff all day long. Some people just don't like it. They don't get into it. And so I think that they feel intimidated that they can't invest because they don't want to do that. So I do try to temper my excitement sometimes on things, because I don't want to push people away. Like, you don't have to sit there and spend your evenings reading white papers and deep diving into like the nuances of the cryptocurrency. Like, quick and dirty, like, are they doing cool things? Are they on the up and up? There's no like craziness going on legally with the team. Or do you see their applications being able to have relevancy in other industries rather than just the DeFi sector? So those are just some quick and dirty things people can like easily look up and read some articles about and, kind of go from there. One of the other things that I was kind of striking to me, I got my PMP last year, so my project management certification. And so I'm really big on projects. The company that we work at together is a project-based company. And one of the things that I found interesting is it's almost like I shouldn't say betting on, it's almost like you're investing on the efficiency of certain projects. So instead of looking at it like, all right, this is like a equivalent to a stock, and then hopefully it goes up and we're going to hope for the best, here's some money. If you look at it as a project that's being managed, is that project being managed well? Is the output of that project going to be relevant and profitable in the next 5 to 10 years? Is it run by good people, smart people, intelligent people? If those answers are yes, then more than likely, I mean, it's better than like putting it in a savings account that's earning like less than the inflation rate right now. So that's my 2 cents. I do like looking at it from a project base, though. I thought that was kind of an interesting way of seeing the world and trying to find value with your investments.
Yeah, I love that strategy because at the end of the day, unless it's Bitcoin, which is obviously decentralized and no one really runs it, everything else on down is backed by some company and is probably more centralized than maybe they want to be on some level, at least at the ideal level. Obviously, the nodes and the way if it's a proof of work, could be decentralized more, like something like Ethereum. But at the end of the day, there are a couple of people, even with Ethereum, that are making the decisions about where the project will go. Moving forward over the next 5 to 10 years, what are you most excited about when it comes to crypto for you personally, for you and your husband, for you and your family, and then just for like the world? What do you think the implications are for crypto? So for like a micro level, being like your family, maybe the financial health, and then for the world, the way these applications probably will continue to mold our future.
Well, I think we've all seen, as we talked about earlier, back in 2008, 2009, 2010, it was just such I call it almost like an awakening. People realized, okay, we cannot keep moving on the same path that we've been going on, and we need to rethink things and restructure how we do things. That's what we did as a family, my husband and I. Our kids are really young right now. I think the thing that I look most forward to is hopefully creating some financial stability for our family. So we're building generational wealth, not just, oh, yay, Greg and Steph can go off to the Keys every weekend. We really want to have something to leave our family behind. I also look forward to, we're already starting to do it, educating our own children about crypto and looking at investing in a way. It's like, we're building this now, but we expect you guys to continue this in the future through all of our asset vehicles. I think macro, I look forward and I hope it doesn't get regulated to the point that this doesn't happen, but I look forward to that more people have access to the financial world and to their financial health. Maybe that's not worded right, but I grew up in a very wonderful area, but it is suffering from the migration of people to the cities. It's a wonderful place to be from. It's wonderful, but there's not a lot of opportunities for people in the rural areas. And I'm hoping that with the adoption of some of the things that are coming out now, like trying to get broadband access to rural areas, less inhabited areas, that coupled with the more access to some of these decentralized financial vehicles, I think that can only be a good thing. I think too long we have had this gatekeeper situation with the financial world that honestly I feel like has contributed to the decimation of the middle class. And I think until we start looking at things in a different way and incorporating some of this new technology through cryptocurrency with our financial health, I think that I feel like we have an entire section of all of the worldwide society, the global society, but particularly in my view in the American society fabric, that are just getting left behind. And I'm hoping that in the future, as we see regulation come down, that's not regulated, that's regulated in a way that allows for almost like a boomer situation again. Like we have a middle class and we have a group of people that can invest and have access to some of these interesting vehicles that can profit from that and create wealth for their families and pump some life back into these rural areas that are really suffering right now, and low economic areas, even in, if they're not rural, cities and urban areas alike. So I really see it kind of leveling the playing field. But I say that cautiously because I do worry that if the regulation is not done properly, it is going to not incorporate those groups of people. And that would be, I think, very tragic.
I couldn't agree more. Depending upon if they decide to call it a security or not, it will create barriers of entry that currently don't exist, which would be very difficult for them people maybe in the future to invest. So good on us maybe for already having our hat in the ring so to speak. But in the future, it could be more prohibitive than it is now and not really be an open free market. And one of the things I heard the other day from Kathy Woods from ARK Invest, she was talking about El Salvador. And a lot of people hate on El Salvador. Oh, they're not doing it right. Oh, this, that, and the other. Well, I'm like, they're the first country to ever try this. So they're going to be mess ups. Like they're not, this is not going to be, if it was your first time trying to put on a prom, I guarantee the punch would be bad. The DJ would be whack. Like it's not going to be perfect. Right. And this was just something to kind of go along. We're talking about the unbanked, and I just got back from Colombia, and so much of Colombia is unbanked. So people are just carrying cash. And if you're carrying cash, it's dying, especially with the peso being pegged to the dollar. So, but looking at El Salvador, there are now more people in El Salvador that have Chivo wallets, which are like their like local Bitcoin wallets, than have checking accounts.
Wow.
And they just signed this thing into law not even 60 days ago. So the access that crypto gives to people who are in the rural areas of wherever it may be, whether it's Central America or North Carolina, is really empowering. Because if you can't put your money into an asset, a digital asset, whether that's buying Tesla stock or buying Bitcoin, if you don't have access to do that over a long period of time, it's really difficult for you to create generational wealth if you're already living on the economic fringe, because you're probably not going to be a landowner. You're probably not going to own a house. You're not going to own anything in the bank's eyes or in the real world's eyes. So having access to Bitcoin, even if through your digital wallet and you're out in the middle of nowhere, most people are on 3G and they have a smartphone. So I think what you said, because that's how I feel about it. I think this is the first time in human history that the farmer in Colombia can take some of his winnings from coffee, and he doesn't own the land. He just rents it out, but he can take some of those, even if it's $30 a month, and just start to stash it away in Bitcoin. And like you said, set up the framework for intergenerational wealth, like on a level that has never been done before, because normally that just is like through estates and through houses.
Right. And it's passed down. And
it's passed down. Yeah. But now in the future, it will be, okay, well, my parents passed away and then they left me their seeds, or they left me their crypto keys. Right. Now I have that and I hold on to that, and I can use that to leverage the bank to give me loans. Yeah. And then I make profit and I pay them back, never ever having to actually sell my Bitcoin. That is where I think we're moving. And that is what I'd love to see. So
same. I really feel that we just have, so like you said earlier, so many people just being left behind, and that really makes me sad. Like makes me sad, like on a very personal level, because it's personal to me. I have friends and family that is happening to. We all know people that just really don't have any other way of progressing themselves or their families. And I feel like this is just another way that we could actually solve that problem. And I do feel very passionate about it. I do think it does go hand in hand, though, with, like we've been talking about professionally, the digital divide. I mean, if it's like we have to get that solved. And I think for so long, it's been particularly, I think American society has had this idea of scarcity, like, oh, well, either I have the money or you have the money. And if I have the money and you start having the money, then you're taking away from my money. I feel like the world is changing, and I feel like it's not a scarcity theory anymore. I feel like it's an abundance theory where, hey, if we can get everybody creating, if we can get everybody involved, it'll not only improve the well-being of society, I think it'll also grow our economy and increase our GDP down the road. So when everybody has a seat at the table and everybody can contribute, I think that it just helps everyone. It helps society as a whole. So I encourage, people who may be nervous about, oh, this whole crypto thing is taken away from, traditional investments. No, I see it as an add-on, and I see it as bringing more people to the table and increasing the ability for not only the U.S., but the entire world to really grow our economies in a way that will help us help not only everybody's well-being in the future, but it'll also help national security as well. That's how I kind of look at it.
I love it. I see it the same way. And thank you for getting up early and doing my very first crypto and cafe.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thanks, Jarrett. I appreciate you having me on today.
Thanks again for listening to this episode, and a big shout out to Stephanie for hopping on the podcast and being a really insightful guest. I, for one, really enjoyed hearing from someone who self-identifies as risk-averse, but who has also done the work to learn and then finally feel comfortable to invest in cryptocurrency. If you're interested to read the 2 standard chartered PDFs that outline how investors should think about Bitcoin and Ethereum, be sure to check out my website at jarrettcarpenter.com/crypto. That's JARRETT carpenter.com/crypto. And as always, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Wi-Fi and Water Podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see everyone next time. Hey, it's Jarrett again. The episode you just listened to was originally recorded under the podcast's first name, Wi-Fi and Water. So please disregard those follow shoutouts and be sure to follow us on social media under our newly rebranded name, More Than Blockchain. And be sure to subscribe to the pod wherever you're listening to it. Thanks for checking out this episode, and I'll see you next time.